uh, concerning the issue of, in your comments on Professor Gopal's thing, I think you had mentioned that the people are supreme and the parliament is not supreme. Actually, it isn't so neatly a cut and dried kind of separation. When we say sovereignty and supremacy, it means the parliament cannot take a decision which is not in consonance with the wishes of the people. Since the elected representatives sit there, they are expected to fulfill the wishes of the people. So therefore, sovereignty in that sense of the term vests with the people. So that's one thing. To that extent, to an external agency, other countries, what the parliament says is accepted, because the outside world would consider the parliament and the government as the supreme representative of the people, and therefore whatever they say is supreme. To that extent, parliament is supreme. But it has to reflect the will of the people. Yeah. So sovereignty to that extent. I am really happy that APART has been able to facilitate a holy trip for all of you, and I'm sure we'll make this an essential feature of future all Bhutanese delegations who come here, and that it is so important for Bhutanese, given the Buddhist ethos, is something that we now have learned to appreciate its importance for all of you. So in the next set of delegations who come, we will ensure that first thing they do is visit this particular site. Okay? For us too, it was a kind of learning about it. Done. Then having said this, the next session we are is supposed to be handled by us. What we have done with reference to this course, when we were trying to leverage gender as the central theme for this whole discussions, we kind of toned it down. The gender dimensions, we have toned it down, deliberately so, because of our TNA, that our visit to Bhutan, where we had discussed down the line, and saw that there is a major difference, even as perceived by Bhutanese themselves, all of you, that is, that the issue of gender as being so thoroughly exploitative, so thoroughly oppressive, as in the case of, let's say India, for example, or let's say the deprivations which are culturally given, did not exist in Bhutan. So therefore, the congenial conditions that seem to be available for Bhutan need not really require such a kind of radical, say, assertion and concentration to make that kind of a behavioral change, which isn't really necessary. So therefore, given your own suggestions in the discussions there in Bhutan, then Bhutan's gender issues are different in nature. It's not that Bhutanese women are so oppressed as in the other cases. Therefore, the perspective of dealing with the issues for women in Bhutan may be of a different nature. So to that extent, going by my own understanding within sociology of the issues of gender, we thought there are some issues still that need to be done. Not within the perspective of a feminist kind of a critique that was leveled by, let's say, Kate Millett down in the US, the kind of women's movements that carried at that time, from literally being accused of being man-haters and the throwing away of the women's garments, etc. That kind of a situation where women had to fight their way across, even in such a advanced democracy as the United States, where women didn't find a place. From there on, the issues of women as a structured persona, as a role structured, culturally determined, and therefore we grow up to accept this as a thing. Otherwise, the persona per se, the individual human being per se, the biological organism differences apart. As a thinking being, we personally take a stand that men and women are no different. In terms of their intellectual capabilities, in terms of their capacity to think, reason, logically, etc., all those being the same. Biological differences, yes, per se, fine. That stops there. But the other dimensions of women, in the Indian context, let me say, where they feel themselves culturally, even in the case of within our cultural ethos emanates from out of a religious ethos. Some kind of overlapping does exist. So from within that cultural imposition of a particular kind of role performance for women, therefore the Indian concept of womanhood per se, has been in the epics put on a sacred pedestal, all right. But in reality, across different caste segments, the diversity of the conception of womanhood and woman per se is so very questionable in today's context, where we are talking about equity on the basis of an individual freedom, individual assertion, individual aspirations, development of individuality, fulfillment of one's own aspirations without any let or hindrance, is something that was never part of this kind of a cultural ethos. So therefore the issue of gender, where their individuality is stunted, where their freedoms are constrained, where their aspirations are limited, where a negative prescription against women occupying certain kinds of roles, certain kinds of status and positions, these became the mainstay. So therefore, womanhood had to, within the Indian context, had to get a kind of make her way across, tear asunder. In the process of trying to assert her individuality, she has to tear asunder layer and layer, layer above layer of those oppressive tendencies. We have this whole issue within our traditions talking about a woman, this is a Sanskrit sloka which I don't remember, but from the time of birth till death, she is never free. She is always under the control of her parents. Then if the parents are not there, the elder son. After that, adolescence, she is restricted. Then marriage, the oppression of the husband. Subsequently, till the death, again the sons take over if the husband dies. Widowhood, a curse on womanhood in India, and from then on to death. So throughout that span is where the culturally oppressive kind of ethos that pervaded India required a tremendous amount of effort on the part of all interventionists to do the intervention, to do any kind of behavioral change dimensions. So, but in the case of Bhutan, this kind of culturally imposed restrictions on freedom of women, apparently, from what we understood, do not exist. What exists is of a different nature. Their own conception, as I said in the last sessions, their own conception of a kind of demarcation of responsibilities of a civic area, not that they were not allowed to do so, but there is some kind of a understanding somewhere which has to be identified, where women think that public life men have to handle, and several other issues of family economy, family issues, all those things they take a decision independently. Therefore, their issues are of a different nature. Now, what we could do in terms of intervention is try to get women to accept that they have also a role in the public domain, in the sphere of political arena, in the sphere of larger economy and its participation, not just being limited to the demarcated areas of our day-to-day living. That is, this particular village to another village, a few limited areas where they feel free to move around within those contexts. So we have to transcend that kind of a limitation of Bhutanese women to accept the larger civic public life, where without any restrictions also they seem to have some kind of a cultural definition of where they ought to be. So this can be overcome because they'll be much more productive, much more involved in the affairs of the country, where 50% of the population would be kept out of the civic and public purview, kept out of the decision-making process, kept out of that much of wisdom which could have been pulled together with 50% of the population added to it. So in this dimension, their education, their health dimensions, specific health issues which are specific to women, prenatal, postnatal, all those issues, participation, all those health issues may be of a predominant nature which may be required. There again, there may be a slight difference in the sense, poverty, as understood in some of our remote rural areas, and inaccessibility to the economic resources might lead to a condition where they require several of these, the consequent ills of ill health, infections, etc., may be a case in point. Bhutan, apparently at the village level, seemed to be a little more prosperous, a little more economically stronger. Therefore, maybe the issues of sanitation, issues of cleanliness, the issues of accessibility, some of the a little more say application of technology, etc., may be a case in point to give them access to these issues. So broadly, I think these variations do exist. So that is why the kind of approaches we have had with reference to handling behavioral change for women in our country is slightly different. All the same, what we like to do, also mention before I start the PPT, is this. Two distinct orientations do exist. When we are talking of feminism per se and women's studies as another approach, there is a kind of attribution of ideology. When we are saying feminism, we are heading towards a whole approach where anything to do with the role of male, anything to do with the assertion of women has to be treated as a kind of ideology where you denigrate every other dimension. Kate Millett, who began with talking of bra burning in public places in the United States, that kind of a disconnect between the male and female in public life and almost forgetting the existence of women, that kind of a thing is not acceptable. Okay? Women's studies does not accept the economic dimension of exploitative elements of women in the economy, as family as an economic unit, and within that the role of women, because we are talking about property, we are talking about property relations when we are talking about women in a family. So the idea of descent, line of descent, and therefore property, etc., was not favorable to women. There we required legislations to support them. But in your case, on this count, again, there is a difference. You had to think of providing for property for men. Recently, the effort was that they also be made shareholders, because you move away from that. So therefore, the kinship, lineage, and descent within the family structure and the role of women in that, in terms of exchange, there is a difference. Structurally, between these two systems, there is that kind of a difference that exists. So therefore, policy issues would have to be reflecting. Yeah. Lineage, descent, inheritance. Okay, so when it is the issue of rights of a woman would be hinged on this issue, because if it's a patriarchy, which is the case in larger Indian subcontinent, property, the name of the family, access to the family property, assets, etc., runs along the father to son, not father to daughter. To that extent, property does not accrue to women. They are given some kind of prestations during marriage to go with. And she goes and stays with the parents. So therefore, in your case, it's a kind of mirror opposite of that. So therefore, interventions would have to be seen with this as a framework. Okay. So property relations were crucial in the Indian context, where women did not have the right to the family property itself. So we legislated several issues concerning this. Widowhood is another issue for us. Widowhood is quite a painful experience, where they lose all rights, social, civic, everything. They're segregated, religious-wise, food habits-wise, everything is an issue for us. So it is I think, a hidden shame in Vrindavan in central India, where most families bring their widows and leave them there uncared for. This was there in the papers. They are supposed to be looked after, practicing piety and religious, etc. But the kind of life they live with a white sari and totally done, food restrictions, movement, all those, that is another curse that some of the Central Indian families, widowed women, face in this country. So therefore, interventions for us and for you have to be assessed in the light of these kinds of structural differences between the two systems of society, culture, and family, in terms of kinship and lineage. So therefore, those things have to be seen. Now, we have, given our oppressive conditions of women, we have designed an effort here. Earlier also we have been doing this. Theoretically, there have been several studies done, but in terms of intervention, I have seen for the first time out of the academic world the way in which interventions confront so many ways of handling that issue. The PPT that we are now going to show is APART's effort, along with UN Women, to somehow address this issue. When UN Women project came up to us, we kind of looked at an opportunity of practically implementing the gender issue. Indian constitution, Indian parliaments have legislated this. One of my other colleagues, friend and student of JNU along with me when I was there, Chaya Ratan, she will be coming in, where she'll be talking about the legislations India has done with reference to women, policies with reference to women. We had to struggle with every single level of rights, of participation, of reservation for women in positions. Now it's 50%. Then protection during widowhood, support during old age, marriageable age had to be legislated. At every phase, we had to think of the state and parliament legislating to support women, to see that these oppressive conditions are liberated itself. Dowry as an issue where the parents of the girl have to give a lot of dowry. That is an oppressive feeling, a terrible feeling for the girl. If the family is not affording, they commit suicides. The harassment that goes afterwards within the family, therefore, Anti-Dowry Act. At each phase of the issue that we confronted, we had to legislate. And women in distress ending up in prostitution, that is another immoral traffic act we had to bring in. At every level, women in the country had been supported by some kind of legislations or the other. Series of such legislations have been made. And the latest, we are fighting out. At the local level, 50% has been given to them. At the national level, they are still struggling. The bill is in Parliament. Sooner or later, that's let go through. So, the struggle for women, their liberation from the cultural oppressive conditions can be seen in the history of legislations that the country has enacted. In spite of that, in spite of those acts in place, being in place, women at the lesser levels have had a large battle to fight. Inside the family, the elders still steeped in those value systems. All the laws exist. Dowry is being given. People commit suicides. They are harassed by mother-in-laws. That happens. Oppressive conditions, still prostitution, people get into prostitution, still people commit. So therefore, laws exist, and then you realize that in spite of the country having so many legislation in support of women, women's conditions is yet to take off. It required an interventionist, severe push. That is when I realized making laws by itself is of no consequence. I remember when I was getting married, that was in 1982, everybody was asking me, will you marry X, will you marry Y, will you marry your cross cousin, because that's a tradition for us, we marry my father's sister's daughter, and if you don't marry, you're marrying outside, probably because you're expecting a lot of dowry. Now, Dowry Act exists, and I was expected to ask for dowry. And then I was one of those people, who was neither here nor there, not a full revolutionary, not an anti-conformist, nor a conformist, struggling between a system of values which exhorts upon the individual that this is your cultural tradition, and a modern logical system, rational system, which says this is irrational. So I as an individual, or you as an individual, have to make this balances between the traditional cultural historicities of which you have inherited, which still hangs on heavily on the society and the individual, and a modern, rationally accepted approach to life, which denies all these kinds of oppressive things. So at that time I said, no, I'm not taking a dowry. Nobody believed. I said, you come from a Reddy community and the heavy dowries are given, you are hiding facts from us. They just couldn't believe that. So much so, laws exist. In practice, everybody is doing the contrary. That is following the traditions. So that is when we realize, this question is asked of me about my son also today. But then they think we still will do it, but they don't understand it's not need to be done, right? So therefore, this kind of intervention option, when it came, I even was involved in it. I thought it does require a major push to alter this kind of a behavioral scene in this thing. But again, with the proviso, with the cautious statement that it need not 100% apply to Bhutan. As I started off with saying, there is a variation here. One has to be cautious about how we do it. Yeah. So
just for our own consumption, when you explained, I understood that dowry.
Yeah.
Why you are paying dowry is a certain kind of price that you have to pay for giving your daughters to the in-laws to look after, right? It's something like in exchange of I give money to you, you take my daughter and look after her.
That's right.
It's something like that, or why dowry is required?
It's a social anthropologically, when you look at it, there are a lot of transitions that have happened in the human societies. There is the opposite of it much earlier, even now in some societies, which is called not dowry but woli, where the husband's family has to be given a dowry, literally a dowry. Okay, so these are linked to certain forms of exchanges that happen. So no. Yeah. That's what you're saying. So therefore, the other dimension of this whole process is, since the women do not have, as I said, they give prestations during marriage when the woman has to leave the family to the husband's place. So therefore, what happens is, since the property is denied to women and only left with men, there is a social obligation that she is taken care of by this family. And by value system, it is enjoined upon the brothers and the family to be offering her what is known as उसको क्या बोलते हैं, टीका and paspu, vermilion and haldi, sindoor and haldi, उसको सही रखने के लिए, to keep that intact, meaning to say, husband should not feel unhappy with her and throw her off, or her health should be all right, husband and she should beget a progeny. That keeping that relationship has to be supported by the family. So therefore, since property is not given, it's supposed to be whatever the family can afford, a certain gift for her, for life, which is given to her from the family property. But there is obligation that the parents visit, the girls' brothers and parents continuously look after her welfare. Annually she is brought here, given. So that kind of a relationship consummated. So therefore, dowry, it became obnoxious when this kind of a cultural tradition became a monetized transaction, where I look at 10 families and then decide which family is giving me more, and I go for that. It became a kind of a demand on the part of the family. In the modern context, where they're coming out trying to build a new house and new opportunities, new property, when it's status issue, they start asking that family, and depending on her money, for this fellow's survival, this fellow's business, to invest in business. So that negativism developed, and therefore Act came to place. That clear? So given those kind of things, our interventionists, when this opportunity came, we decided to design a way of handling the situation in 3 districts: Srikakulam, Vizianagaram and Mehboob Nagar. Mehboob Nagar, yesterday you went. Some of the exercises that were done here. Yeah. Okay. This is what we did. That first agreement that we had was this. AP, we were responsible for capacity building, that is training programs at all levels. Okay?
Is it through this project that your trainees are trainers?
Yes.
You have a resource person.
Correct.
And what was?
In Visakhapatnam and Vizianagaram and Srikakulam and Mehboob Nagar, those DPOs also were trained by us. They are recruited by UNDP, all right, UN women, but we also gave them training here. So they were trained, the women volunteers were trained, the sarpanches, the Jilla Parishad, the people, all those elected representatives and officials connected with this were also trained by us. So our responsibility was capacity building at all levels. The rest support the system. Motivators that are there, also part of the UN team, they are responsible for keeping track of the people, attending of meetings, dissemination of information, all that these motivators in every village do that. Okay, so we have trained these guys also. These volunteers also, we have conducted training programs for them.
You have a special specific topic
on how to deal with this. Okay, so awareness among also men at the Shokpas, below Shokpa. Sure. So this is our responsibility was basically capacity building, and we took care of these motivators, we took care of these volunteers, and also general women awareness campaigns in villages. So our strategy was to try and reach out the crucial people involved with reference to what they could do for women. See, our challenge is this. Today, it is 33%, as of now. In the coming elections, it will be 50%. 33% we had this many. Let us say, Zilla Parishad in the district Zokha. In the Zokha level, this is the chairpersons. Okay? Out of 22, 7 were women, when it was 33%. And they are members of the ZP elected, when it was 33%, the numbers are 368. Now, if you make it 50%, this will be the number of women that will be there at the Zokha level as members. Similarly, at the Sarpanch level, that is Gamp, at 33% there are this many. When it becomes 50%, this will be the numbers. Okay? Ward members, Shokpas. These are at 33 level, 33% level, 50%, this will be the numbers, total numbers. The volume of women to handle, for election representatives to handle for training will suddenly multiply for us. You know? So we have to have a strategy to deal with all these people down the line. So that happens. This is the state level numbers. This is only for Mahbubnagar, this is for Srikakulam, and this is for Vizianagaram. So these are the numbers that we have to crunch out in terms of training for these people.
So these are the elected?
Elected representatives. This is the state numbers. These are district numbers. Okay, this is for the whole state.
So it's 73,000.
What happens is, when it is 33%, it is this much. When it is 50%, this will be the numbers. 1,14,155 elected representatives. A large number of women will be entering the public domain. A very large number of women occupying severe positions of decision making.
When is the deadline?
This, I think, in the next 6 months it should happen. For the first time, we'll be running 50%. But in other states of India, 50%, some other states in India, 50% is already in practice. But everyone has necessarily this number. And I think by the numbers are so fast increasing towards 50%, almost all the states will have 50% people. So the grassroots level elected representatives suddenly will double across the country in terms of women. So the large volume of women that will be entering the public domain, many of them for the first time in their lives, stepping out of their family kith and kin, having to sit with males and having to take decisions, is something that's a phenomenal transformation that is going to happen, and therefore that big phenomenal challenge for them and for us in trying to deal with this. Now, how did we go about doing that? Several of the activities that we undertook were these. There was a workshop in which we participated, where we highlighted various areas of concern. In APARD, what we had done is, Samalakota, in the video conferences we had met these people from here, Samalakota, when we connected. In this place, we collected elected women representatives of the project area districts in the Extension Training Center at Samalakota, where we did a training needs assessments for them. The kind of training assessment that we came in Bhutan to do, I must now confess that given the circumstances that we were stuck with in Bhutan, we really, this is again off the records, we really did not do the TNA as it should have actually been done at all the levels. Sitting with them, conducting a small 2-hour, 3-hour orientation, then making them to groups, coming out with a presentation, aggregating all that, not only at the parliamentary level, secretariat level, at the Zokha level, at all those levels, this should have been done. Somehow, some kind of a communication, we don't know what happened, but we had to do with a very quick, rapid kind of a TNA assessment when we were there. But otherwise, we have very serious 2-day sessions with each group that we put together. So they are made to go through each phases of their experiences. They are made to look at the challenge they were confronted, experience that they were confronted. Then they put it down. Then we look at what was it that they had to contend with in their practice of so many years. What is it? At what points they faced difficulties? Whether it was to do with skills, whether it was to do with attitudes, whether it was to do with the larger structures, whether there was not a facilitating environment in the structures in which they are working. All these were very clearly analyzed, and on the basis of which we gave them some kind of a content for training and then developed them. So that training needs assessment was made in this place for the project areas. After that, we develop these training modules. This is again vetted out, and for field workers, a kind of workshop was held, and then they were created. In the process, what happens? It becomes specific to the particular area from which these representatives come. Andhra Pradesh has 3 different regions. Each of them have a certain historicity. Each of them has certain cultural practices. Some parts of Andhra Pradesh, women are very outgoing. They're very enterprising. Some parts of Andhra Pradesh, very oppressive conditions. So when we are looking at these TNA assessments, what we will have to do is tailor these content and delivery to those particular kinds of target audience. So this is why we take care of this kind of a thing. Module for training. This also happened. The selection modules were sent to us. Women elected volunteers were then asked. The DPOs and the district administration was told that they should visit the villages along with the DPOs and motivators, talk to the villagers, wards level, discuss with them who would be the most trusted person. That's necessary. Their approval and their consent is necessary, because if he tells, they should be listening to him. We cannot have a person who is belonging to a particular faction or a particular group. We have to have a person who is acceptable socially, otherwise, and to all the inhabitants of that particular ward. Then only the program would work. If I come and sit with you, tell you something, and if you perceive me as belonging to that faction, you would not listen to what I'm saying. So you'll have always that block. So what we did, when they're selecting these motivators, these volunteers, we said, talk to them. The MPDO, the district development officers, the DPOs of the UN Women Project, the motivators concerned, and including the elected representatives of the area. We told them, go to the villages, give us a set of volunteers. Those names, when they came, we put them to training program for them. So we had a training handbook created, tested it on these people, that is used at different levels. The same basis is used for different levels. Depending upon the target audience, it is toned, it is made intense, or it's reduced in terms of content that is delivered. This has happened in the districts. The empowerment volunteers also. What is the role of the empowerment volunteers? No different from the district project officer of the UN Women. No different from the motivators that we had trained. Why is there no difference? Why is this handbook content no different for the district project officers that UN has appointed, which we have trained? The motivators that were put in place, also we use the same same thing. For the women empowerment volunteers, we use that. A modified version we use for the officials. Our Jilla Parishad, Mandal Parishad special officers, Gram Panchayat special officers, Jilla Parishad, all of them also put through this. Why is it same? Almost same.
Because they have the same mandate.
Exactly. All of them have the same mandate. All of them have to deal with the empowerment of women. Issues are same, but their individual responsibilities at each level vary. That is highlighted in case A, highlighted in another thing, highlighted in case B, another dimension highlighted in case C. So depending upon the target, we do that kind of thing. Therefore, yeah. Norway, Commissioner and team had gone there. There were some discussions in the Norwegian headquarters where other countries, project area people also had come. What we had done is, some of the booklets, pieces are there in your bag. The campaign material that you had already circulated. They were circulated earlier also in another meeting in Thimphu. They were circulated in Jaipur, all over the place. Some of these were taken as models to be implemented elsewhere, in the normal context where even the project did not exist. Where UN project does not work also, these things were taken up and used in several areas, because they became very, were perceived as some kind of a useful set of models. So what we did was this. We designed a logo, because when you go down to people, there should be something they identify with, as a kind of small movement. They have to accept this. It has to have some kind of an approach or a philosophy. Some kind of a ideology has to be given to the people to say this is what is going to be achieved. The logo was designed by our commissioner and with all of us sitting together. So by his own, he drew that picture too. I'll show you. Then information, education, campaign material were these. We had badges. I don't know if you have that, but you'll see them in the picture. Brochures, report cards, T-shirts were designed. I do not know if you have seen these T-shirts used by the girls in Mehboob Nagar trip. If they were wearing or not, I'm not sure. But these were given to some of them. Wall hangings were created, bags were created, films were created, training manuals were produced. All this, and then we won this last line. The last line, we showed you this on the entrance there in the cupboard. National Ladli Media Award. Ladli means affectionate one. It's told about daughter, not about men. The Ladli is a feminine gender. So that was the result of our efforts. So all these were specifically developed for this purpose. So when you try a campaign anywhere across the world, it would be a good idea to start with this kind of a material, which can be displayed, which can be put up on the walls, which can be distributed, which they can wear conspicuously to make others conscious of the whole process that is under implementation. So this material that we developed was copied elsewhere also. So therefore, any methodology of trying to at behavior change, I think this should be an essential component. You see this picture? It's there in your baggie. Half of this is the female eye. What they are saying in effect is the rest half is actually the whole thing is male dominated. The picture says this sama bhagam means Hindi mein sama, equal. Sama bhagam means share. That's a Sanskritic root, so it's understood in all languages. Sama bhagam means equal share. So we put that picture in the planet in which women had no place in the public domain. So in this logo we are saying half of it is for women, take care. It's surprising, Indian lore also talks about Ardhanarishwara. Half of a human being has necessarily to be the female component. Okay? So we use this kind of a logo designed by us. And therefore, this kind of a pithy thing that we coined is now put up in many places. Outer blue circle, what's the time please? 11, yeah. So the outer blue circle, the planet, fashioned, because men have fashioned a patriarchal society with a dominant role for themselves. The woman's half symbolizes conscious women demanding half the share of social, economic and political space. Decision-making space. Public life. So this represents that assertion of women now, conscious women demanding half share of social, economic and political space, that is gender equity. This word samabhagam that we have written here, the local language, means this, equal share. Is the basic philosophy behind this whole logo is this: a gender-sensitive woman demanding equal share, social, economic and political space on this globe. So every woman ought to understand this. So if she wears that badge on her thing, it conscientizes, it tells the other person, and therefore that's the approach, the philosophy this carries. These were the badges that we were all wearing during that campaign period. Every one of us used to pin this badge. In fact, we had it inside our cars also. Stickers were there. So this was the word Samabhagam written on it, front and back. When the campaign starts, when they move around from village to village, this is how it looks. These were standees. They can be hung on the wall. You can put it up in the standees that we had outside with the President and His Majesty. So they can be used with these kind of things put up in all the Gram Panchayats, Shokpas, etc. Some of the publications that we made, these cards, etc., are these. This was a bag which everyone worker carried with all these symbols. This is the symbol of the thing. This is about the girl child. These are some 10 commandments that we have printed. Why we printed our topsy-turvy is to generate curiosity. If you give a straight thing, they will look at it and throw it. But this way, they will, "Arey, what is written?" They will turn it around and then want to read it. Ye kya hai? Ye kya hai? If it's a straight thing, one glance and they'll put it back. This way, they'll be compelled to read. That was the strategy why we made it this way, that way, thing. So the report card on their health, etc., which has to be maintained by the volunteers and the families and the UN workers. Okay, you are UNDP workers. We have also developed these kinds of films. Did we show them anything? Anything down shown on women? Excuse me. Hello, yes. So, nutritional needs of pregnant women. Tradition and culture has some very absurd. We do not know the goodness, sanctity. There may be some kind of a medicine we don't know, and the practice is done in the ages, in the hoary past. But they are detrimental to the health of the mother, health of the child that's growing up in the. So it needs to be addressed. The nutritional food that should be given. So this film was prepared for that purpose. This one, Kotala, is a name of a village in Chittor district of Andhra Pradesh, where our intervention created a major transformation of that village and the women's involvement in the whole affair, where the volunteers became a bridge between the community, where each of the volunteers responsible for 10 to 15 families. All the volunteers in that village would have covered every single household. I am responsible for 10 families. I know the whole history, biology of that family. I have the data, their education, their income levels, their number of children, their diseases, their health requirements, number of old age people. So if anyone asks me, I can tell you what my people's needs are, what their issues are, what their current status is. So they are expected to relate to the government, relate to the developmental structures, relate to the various schemes that are there which may be applicable to them. If they do not know, I am here to help them. So therefore, accessibility for women to various of these benefits that are there for them in terms of rules, regulations, schemas, support system that are available, the volunteer takes care of relating those things to them constantly. Suppose there is a pregnancy announced in one of the families. You do that little functions. This boy has to take note of that. This volunteer has to take note of that. And then now advise. Tell the health system. Tell the local health officers. And then see at the appropriate time what is to be done for that woman and for the child. The family has to advise. So the volunteers then, as part of the village community and their everyday life, are constantly there with every family with reference to some of these issues. So in the project area, we were given to understand the women feel so secure, so well supported. In one case, they called up the ambulance. There's a 107 service. They accompanied the lady, advised her, took her to the hospital, admitted there, all the benefits that are due to her. If there's a government support, that was accessed. Happily, they come back home with their help. But earlier, a woman had to fend for herself. A woman's family had to fend for themselves. Now there is somebody in between to support it. Just a second, please. So this Kotala village, the way it functioned there, we documented that whole process. The village process, the volunteers, what they have done, how they have convinced the people, what kind of activities they have taken up, all that was made into a film. We all the way went down there and shot the whole proceedings. When it began, me and Kamshar and a team of us were there in that village to orient the whole thing. And after which, we started getting reports of what they are doing every day. And when we saw that it's a great success story, we also documented that whole process and circulated that to everybody. Use that as a information campaign material for others to emulate.
Yeah, I have a question, sir.
Yeah, please.
Who is this volunteer? I mean, he has to work. He must be having his own work.
Exactly.
He has to look after his family.
Mm.
He needs some money to go about his business. Maybe he has to take a car, a rickshaw ride or something like that. So how does who is a volunteer?
Exactly. This is a question we have been faced with from no lesser person than the Secretary Government of India. No lesser person than Professor Mr. Panda, who is responsible, is part of this project at the Delhi level. In Odisha, when I made the first presentation, the concept of volunteerism and to use it, he said, who is going to work without paying money? We have disproved this. We have disproved that man is just an economic animal. We have disproved that man can be a philanthropist. Man can be a human being that he actually is. A human being that had to be discovered, which has been totally distorted by virtue of the kind of modern economy and the pursuit of pleasures and the pursuit of wealth, that we have been forgetting some of the basic human. This area we have told us we'll come together. This is what we are planning. We want somebody who can spend a little time with you and give us information, support you, support us in implementing all these things which will make you happy. It's okay, this boy is there, he is very good, he knows how to read and write, we trust him, you please take this name and train him up. That is a volunteer. Nowhere we gave them. We were challenged. We were challenged by the Joint Secretary Government of India. This is not possible. We just ignored him, we went ahead with our project. Every person in the other department said, is this possible? We ignored them and we went ahead with it. The result is, we started in a village called Chideda. We ran that for 6 months. We knew it was a roaring success. From there we expanded it to other villages, this Kotala, Ramchandrapuram. Today we have 1,900 gram panchayats in which these volunteers are functioning. We have now 30,000 volunteers who are working on their own, totally autonomous, coming up with plans and programs which even the planners of this country have not dreamed, relevant to their situation. So, no question of any payment whatsoever. On the contrary, if there are serious issues, they are sitting together and pulling money from themselves, mobilizing others' money for the purpose. It's a roaring success. Today in Andhra Pradesh, we have 30,000 of them. In the Government of India's Disha website of the Ministry of Panchayat Raj, and in our own APARD website, it will be there, key cap. You click that, you will get all these details. You know, so many, that was a roaring success. I was thrilled no end. We sit yapping theories, never did anything in our lives to alter some of the situation. I'm not saying that we have achieved heaven. Sorry. I'm not saying we achieved heaven. But we have noticed a tremendous difference in approach to these issues because of the volunteers. They have had a sense of belonging, sense of concern. For once again, all the village community was thinking that we are for each other. That's something which was dissolved by the market economy and its forces. So that change, I think we ignited once again, which was there historically. Somewhere it went off track. Now they want to do something for their village. Otherwise, why should a non-resident Indian staying in the United States, watching somewhere he clicked and got this website of this village name, and looked at that for some time and sent money to that village saying, I've been following your what you've been putting up on the APARD website. I think this can be done in your village given from experience. Please use this money for that. What a success. We did not know Intel Corporation was watching our websites. We never knew this. Suddenly there was an inquiry, we would like to come and talk to you about your volunteers. We said, welcome. So when they said, we have studied all this from your websites, we made our own investigations. Each of those villages also have websites. And we want to now do an experiment. I was carrying that blue laptop the other day, small piece. 100 laptops were given to us. That was at the beginning of the phase of this implementation. We distributed that to all over the village. They take this laptop, shoot their pictures, put it on our website. So what activities they are doing there. And it's a phenomenal thing. Unbelievable. So therefore, So this film on Kotala, there are several others also. On Chideda is one other village where we have done. This is another film on Bharat Nirman volunteers. For our volunteers, we need expenditure to train them. They do their work free, all right. But to train them, to bring 500 people, the 30,000 fellows who are now on rolls, we have put them, half of them have gone through a training. Now they are themselves training the neighboring villages, whoever come. What happened initially was, if this village has done some work, the neighboring villages see that. While going to market, going to school, when they pass through that village, they see this work going on. They write to us. Few of them came up here, sir, we heard of this, I believe you are doing this, you have trained X village. Our village also want to come, sir, would you like, why don't you train us? Then we said, we had to hold a meeting, no funds. If they have to stay here with us for 4 days, invite resource persons, invite those troops, dance, drama, we do a different mechanism. And some film that we produce, we have to have money for that. That is when we noticed we had this Bharat Nirman Volunteers Fund available with the MOPR. So our initial work was in few villages actually, just 2 villages. When we understood the concept, when we were wondering how to grow with this, we discovered this money. So we titled them now Bharat Nirman Volunteers, tapped those funds and went through a severe training program for all of them. We do it through our distance mode video conferencing for all the 1097 mandals in which this village are situated. It's a great experience. Sit from morning till 5 till evening 5, talking to them across the state, each one telling us what they have done, asking questions for solutions which we have done. That happens once a month. Okay, so the potential for this kind of an approach is immense. The methodology can be applied for so many other things. Now we realize we have devised a kind of a methodology with volunteers on the one hand, material on the other. It is gender, it can be anything else. We have tried that with development programs, where volunteers not only deal with gender programs, but also with all the flagship programs of the Government of India. Development programs of the Government of India, rural development programs of the Government of India. We discovered there are 1,000 of them, 250 and odd programs implemented in the state. None of the collectors knew what those programs are. None of the elected representatives knew what those programs are. But the programs are there, funds are there, untapped, unused. The people, of course, don't know it at all. So we applied this to that. They started looking at this training in the program. We gave them all the content of all the training programs. Who's eligible? How much fund is available? What is the criteria? How to tap it? Whom to approach? They have become the harbingers of change, even with reference to the other programs. So we developed a technology, a delivery mechanism, which can be now used, a tool that can be now used for anything that you want. We use that in KICAP, we use that in UN Women. First, when we tried to use that in UN Women, there was a resistance from the UN Women and Mr. Panda. All right, said, you do what you like, we do what we like. And we succeeded. No other state succeeded as good as we did. The secret is tapping this powerful ethos and sentiment that each one of us carry. Our roots, our love for our roots, our love for our village. We have nostalgic memories of what's happening down home. I feel bad sometimes what's happening there. I would like to contribute to it, but who is there to take care of that? That was the issue. So we provided that linkage to the sentiment for its expression. I think that is the crux of one statement. If I say we have devised a mechanism to tap that sentiment and put that potential of that sentiment was actualized into activities. I think that sums up the ethos of what we have done. Yes. Then several of these this is another film on Grama Sabha. There was a booklet given to you in English. Domestic violence. There was a film. Very powerful. They have short films, but so powerful in their content. So powerful. Some of the short films are 4 minutes, 3 minutes. You will shed tears. It can't but move you. So our technology that we adopted, short films are just 3 minutes, 4 minutes. One of them is even 1.5 minutes. Sure shot, you will be melting. So when we try motivational campaigns, when we try behavioral change technologies, when they see those films, you should see the faces. Magnificent thing. The Norwegian team delegation that came, Navaras, that name is there on the Gandhiji's thing, pedestal below. Navarasate. Another team came from New York. We just switched on those and were looking at their faces because we know we were trying to judge the interaction. They were normally European, American, are cutthroat, what we call selfish, self-centered, individuated, highly output-oriented, money-oriented characters. Even the time they measure in money. Thank you for giving me your time, as if that is money. They believe time is money. So when you go and spend 5 minutes, thank you so much for giving so much of your time. I didn't give you time. I don't give you time. But such people, socialized in such a kind of ethos, were melting. They were in tears when the South Sound is concerned. So the films as a medium, which our commissioner has introduced, films as a method of behavioral change was very powerful. We have seen that now. We reduce much of the oral content, but use this and then get back to it. One of the films you saw in the first day was that give people what they want, not what you think you should give. Flowers all the time. No. It's a short film, but it conveys. Okay?
Sir.
Yeah. Please.
On this domestic violence front.
Domestic violence, yes.
Yeah, I was reading your newspaper just a few days ago.
Yeah.
And it was given that 1 in 2 women in Andhra Pradesh live in fear of their partners. 1 in 2. And a cartoon was shown where a huge bull with a long horn, he has thrown half the building away, and this little woman in a sari was clinging on the wall. So that kind of a situation, how I thought it was not true.
It is not true. But then, there is a function for these kinds of critiques of society. You know, it tries to hit the society very hard to show what the underbelly of the society actually does, not known to the outside world. You know, violence as defined in terms of what is going to be an issue. Shouting down a woman, I think, is a major violence, as far as my standards go. But beating a woman for some, maybe that's acceptable, as long as she's not murdered. There are cases in village panchayats where I intervened. Why did you beat your wife? There was a lot of gadbad hitting, etc. You passing by, you see, stop your car and then say, what is this? You should not beat your wife. You know what the woman says? Sir, you please don't interfere. This is our internal affair. This also happens. Because a social value system which accepts the domination of man, even to the extent when he beats it, after all, he is my husband, he's permitted to beat me. I mean, so there are these levels of how do you define violence. So the study concerned must have been a critique by a voluntary agency which is done in its particular area. Violence in that broad sense of the term, yes, it happens. But not as exaggerated there, as if, the whole world is... you should have been seeing women all over the streets by now in tattered clothes running all over the place. No, that's not the case. But he's making a point to say that situation has to improve. We agree with that. So the cartoon, to highlight that. Yeah. We have great cartoonists in this country. Great cartoonists. We had a cartoonist festival recently. The global meeting was held here. It was, my God. Anyway, so these are the films that we have done. We use them in our campaigns. And for the training programs, what do we do? Our modules cover all these dimensions.
What do you do in role play?
We make them play the Gram Panchayat president. So the group sits down. Now conduct the meeting. So this group, we tell them what to ask. So this girl has to answer now. Some of them say, they laugh, go this way. No, you have to answer. No, sir, I will do later. Nothing doing. So this girl will start attacking this girl. So slowly she comes around, starts talking this, that. And towards the end of it, she is such an assertive person, able to argue, talk, debate. What the next elections, I can take a challenge. All these women have been trained. All of them will be in the election arena. They have become so energized and now become so very assertive. Sudden realization that, well, why did we not do this all these days? That kind of realization has come up. So this is the content that we use. This is the reaction. They kind of disembowel. When they sit here and talk in closed doors amongst themselves, the debate is generated, they literally tear themselves apart and recount how they have grown up as a child, what kind of things that they have faced, and how they faced their torture and still survived it, and what they wish to do about it now. It's very interesting to listen to their biographies when they talk about it. So some of these are captured on film also. We're using those films for this thing. This is the mock exercise that we conduct.
Oh. So who's the actor?
These are questioners. This is the Panchayat president. They are the members. So volley. Very interesting. Again, volunteers training. We use the similar content for them also with a modified thing. This is another one at Vijayanagaram. These are Gram Sabhas, model Gram Sabhas. They had come here, they visited these places, they was literally stunned. Some of these things that we are doing, I think these are all completed now. She was here. Commissioner garu lerandi kinda. You please take him to Commissioner.
Okay.
Fast. కింద చెప్పేసుకోండి. We were part of this. We took those decisions for them. More of these things. These were also now in the face. Our Gram Panchayat secretaries, not the elected ones, who are limbs of the government. Some of these cards that you have been seeing. This is okay. We conducted our own internal audit. We go and inspect the district level. Steering committee decisions taken, bi-monthly meetings, we have been given a role to do that. Yeah, we do all that. What next we plan to do? This is going to be a project that we are taking up to train them. The experience that have happened now in these years is going undocumented. Suddenly we realize that. The rest of us should know what's happening, how at each village is a world unto itself. They have been tackling issues in accordance with their situations. We do not know how they have tackled it. But that is a lesson, a model that can emerge out of that. So we said, we'll call those fellows, conduct a training program for them, how to document those practices, how to write out those things. They may become volume after volume for others to read, see and understand. So that workshop we are doing for them now. Several other things that when the election is announced, we are going for a pre-election campaign, vagera. Okay, the kind of program that we are doing. This is what some of the strategies that can be emulated. BNVs is a concept. Every village or GUMP can be sensitized. BNVs can be trained. These are training designed on the basis of training methodology. Films can be produced. Some of these things is what we have achieved. This village held a meeting and said, all the Shokpas will be women this time. They have passed a resolution in that village. Now the intensity of the campaign can lead to real positive results. This is the case in Udingan. Okay, so that's the model and strategy that we have implemented here, and we have seen good results. Women issues with reference to the state government, with reference to the development programs, with reference to the legislations and their rights that they are entitled to as laid down in the statute books and in the eligibility criteria of all the development programs. All of those things have now been clearly disseminated to all of them, and the response is phenomenal. We never expected that they would be so very vocal, so very articulate and want to be part of the decision-making process. Things are changing rather very powerfully. So that much for a model that could be utilized. This same model can be applied in your case without probably so much of assertion on domestic violence. Somebody told me domestic violence we also have, sir, but the case is it is the husband that gets beaten up. So you may try this that way also. You may tell the men how to handle the situation. So it's a model, it's a technique, it's a methodology that we thought we should share with you for intervention to alter the circumstances that women go through. Okay, thank you. I'll just get down and do my role of getting the other resource person.